Welcome. You're listening to Parts and Charts, the IFS and Astrology podcast. I'm Chelsea Owens, an artist and licensed marriage and family therapist specializing in internal family systems, and one of my spiritual gifts is the ability to balance depth and fun.
And I'm KP Kajabowski, a poet, filmmaker, and astrologer who seeks pathways to fully loving myself and others, and the language for what is happening underneath the surface.
Together, we explore how inner parts and planetary archetypes speak to one another. Whether you're new to IFS or astrology or deep in your own integration practice, we're glad you're here. Hello.
And we're back. All right. So today we are focusing on the concept of wounds, woundedness. We're using kind of a broad word on purpose because there's specific language in IFS, the IFS modality, as well as other practices of astrology that use very different words. So that's like our broad sense, and we're going to try to find commonality in our practices with the hypothesis, like we do with most of our episodes. We have the hypothesis that IFS as a therapeutic mode works really, really well with like similar parts work that we do in astrology. Yeah. So that's how we're starting. Before we hit record, we were talking about like how do we make wounds, the concept of wounds fun or interesting or lively, and then
Laughed.
we laughed.
And I want to be clear, I take my job very, very seriously.
Mhm.
Not, podcaster me, but uh, therapy me. Like, so I definitely can, jump right into serious mode and or teacher mode and get really, really, I guess, deep and
Yeah.
serious. And I love that. And there's a time and a place for that. But I also so I'm holding how sacred all of this stuff is and how important it is and how deep it is. And also, yeah, I want to make it fun.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
not just a bummer, right? Because it's not just a bummer. It's so many things. And for the sake of like making this somewhat entertaining or fascinating to listen to,
Yeah.
um, all of our air placements that really want that for everybody.
Yeah. And earlier we were talking about we pulled tarot cards to give us some more focus for this episode. And Chelsea was like, maybe we should like, I'll get my deck out and I'll pretend that the like you just saw on the screen that she has the Three of Swords and the Magician. That's what came out for her. And I have the Ace of Swords that came out for me. We were drawing at the same time. And she was like, "Well, we'll just like do it again, but we'll have the exact cards that came out." I was like, "I can't act. I don't we just have to talk about what happened because I can't pretend." And then you said something brilliant. Do you want to share?
What did I say?
Oh, yeah, with those brilliant ideas that just like slip away because they're just like that's what needed to be said in the moment. But you said like what like acting is
Oh,
life.
everything
All
is
of life is
everything.
yeah. Yeah. I was like, okay. Uh-huh.
Is that just my Leo? Is that that's something?
It could be, but I think there is like a resistance for me, in that I have a harder time playing other roles or like assuming different parts of myself because I don't know, I'm really curious about that, like especially as someone who directs actors pretty often, I have a really difficult time stepping into different parts.
Ah,
Yeah.
interesting. Yeah, interesting.
But
Okay,
I
this is like a
know.
whole separate episode that we're discovering right now.
Yeah, I think we should talk about that because I know that there's so much healing that can be done or fun or like there's so much that can be done. The possibility of playing different parts and seeing what happens
Right.
and playing pretend. Like, oh yeah, we did just like
Yeah.
draw this card even though we manufactured it. Like that's an interesting thing for me to look into.
Yeah, right. Yeah, psychodrama. I mean, there's whole like therapy modalities, and even in IFS, there's ways of working with your parts and having other people act them out. if you're in a group setting, or even like if you're individual, you can act out different parts. Like we'll often do that too.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. And then
There's
we were talking about the rehearsal, which is
oh
my
yeah.
favorite show right now.
Wow, yeah, and like
How much
really
I love it.
reforming things in my mind of like possibility. Yeah, I love that show so much. The Nathan Fielder show.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mhm.
We're both okay, like behind the scenes stuff. We're both huge Nathan Fielder, probably to a troubling level fan. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the concept of, just practicing these things and playing different roles so that you can try different things on, like see what it feels like to say something you maybe wouldn't normally say
Yeah.
when you're in this different role. It gives you kind of a permission or pass to do that. Yeah.
Absolutely. There's actually a really fascinating like group of astrologers who lead like narrative astrology, like big enactments with like dozens of people around a circle. Like, okay, now we're like going to talk to Pluto, and then someone like plays the part of Pluto or something like that. And it's like I need to be at one of those.
Oh, that would be so cool. Yeah, I
Yeah.
feel like we could do that together with both of our modalities.
Yeah, that'd be really
Yeah,
fun.
it'd be really fun. Okay, well,
Okay.
also you said something brilliant about the Three of Swords. Do you want to share that?
Yeah. Okay, so Chelsea showed on the before we started recording, the first card that she got was the Three of Swords, which if we're thinking about the concept of woundedness, I feel is like the most precise card to give us information. And the way that I view that card is it's a reminder that the emotions or the present state of a wound has passed, and there's probably many years of like that has passed since that wound was created. But can you hold up the Three of Swords? In the Pamela Coleman Smith illustration on this card, there's three swords in like a pretty like comic book looking heart, which is like one of the only like symbols in the deck, like a true like a child draws a heart kind of symbol. So there's three swords in that heart, and it the way that I view that card is that the swords as like our thoughts or our memories are holding the wounds in place or the raw emotions in place. And when that card comes up, we have a choice. Swords have a lot to do with choice as well. We have the choice of pulling the sword out kind of like a pin and like releasing what has been held there. And like we can acknowledge that that in itself is painful, even if the pain that started the wound is gone. Yeah, so that's how I see that card. I was like, what a perfect card to come out. And then my card was a swords card as well. I got the Ace of Swords, the like the number one card for swords, which reminded me that like woundedness does it's like it lives in that kind of like thought pattern or belief pattern place. Swords as in like what we hold to be true in our minds is like how we live and how we act and
Mm.
our perspective in this world. So I thought it was really cool that we both got swords. And then the magician, if you want to talk about the magician.
Magician. Yeah, I mean that's just like alchemizing. To me, it feels like in this context, alchemizing the wound, right? Kind of spinning that into gold. Um,
Yeah.
to put it really simply. Yeah.
I love the magician because he's a reminder that we always have everything we need
Mm-hmm.
if we remember that.
Right. Look at all those tools.
Yeah. Yeah, he has all the
Awesome.
tools right in front of him.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, wow. Like we maybe we should do this every time because I
Episode done.
all the wisdom.
Figured it out.
Yeah.
But yeah, I can maybe explain a little bit from my perspective about wounds and how
Mm.
that relates to IFS. So I would use the word burdens. That's the word, that's the IFS term for wounds. So uh it's what the parts are carrying, extreme parts, what extreme parts are carrying. It could be a negative belief, emotion, a trauma, a sensation, any energy that was absorbed or accumulated from the past, from a trauma or some life experience. Um, and which is to relate it to the Three of Swords. Yeah, it feels like, okay, the part, I'm imagining that like a part kind of maybe in the heart space, right? Um, and those burdens, like the swords, are keeping that pain or that even meaning that the part has made
Mhm.
about that experience, about the client, the belief that's been made in place, right? So that's kind of what the whole, not what the whole work of IFS is, but it's a primary goal, I'd say, is to help liberate those parts that are in those extreme roles, that have this like supercharged burden that they're carrying, to unburden that, to release it, to let it go, and be witnessed in that process by self, by therapist, and then return that part returns to whatever their preferred role is, whatever their kind of natural born gift was, before they became burdened. So we're not getting rid of the part, we're kind of, I guess, getting rid of the burden or releasing that burden that they've been carrying.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And I my one of my supervisees said something really sweet yesterday when we were talking about more so in the sense of couples work, because I guess I'm tying this into couples work because I think we notice a lot of wounds showing up when we're in relations with other people, right? When we're
Yeah.
in this relational dynamic, and that's when we probably get triggered, right? Or of course we're getting triggered by other people. Like our wounds are getting triggered, things are getting brought up. And there's this thing in NVC with Marshall Rosenberg's nonviolent communication work. Um, like he said, it's a beautiful need, like this the wound or the thing that's getting kind of stirred up in a person, which may be acted out in various ways, right? That looks like a fight or an argument or whatever's getting like whatever's showing up behind all of that is just a beautiful need. And I really love that. Because to me, what the wound is just a beautiful need.
Yeah. Wow.
Um, yeah, and it, that needs to be tended to and worked with inside the person system, like with yourself, so that you can be in relationship with others.
Yeah. I think I want to ask a very obvious question.
Yeah.
Um, do you ever encounter a person who doesn't have a burdened part?
There's definitely parts that can be that don't have burdens. I mean, I'm talking about extreme parts, so parts that are showing up in extreme ways and have extreme beliefs. But
Yeah.
extreme can really mean a lot of things, right? That probably means something different for you than it does for me. So it's really just working with your own system and your own parts to find out more about how the part's showing up in your life. Is it showing up in an extreme way where it's kind of like every day there's, this extreme belief or some meaning and it's keeping you from doing something or, however they're interacting with you in your system and the world. It's going to look different for everybody.
Yeah.
And then once parts are unburdened, the burdens are released, the wounds are healed, then they're just parts. Then they're just doing the thing in the system. They're, maybe um, being creative or, just doing things that aren't super extreme. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Yeah. I guess I'm just curious, like, how many burdens does a regular person have? And I think that's one of like the things that I ask too often, of like
Hmm.
comparative, like, well, like how many wounds should I have, and do I have too many, or do I have too few?
Mhm.
When I'm 75, will I have zero wounds or
Mhm.
burdens active? And I think that's maybe just like the urgent searching for peace in my heart for all people.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, my perspective as an astrologer is coming up in like all of us are born with like wounded, like the potential energy for wounds.
Mhm.
Um, and that's part of being human.
Yeah.
It's part
Yeah.
of us like learning what we desire. In many ways, woundedness is a guide toward love. And like
Yeah.
what you were saying about the burden being like a representative of a need, a beautiful need, like that is a really helpful phrase.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I totally get that like question of wanting to know, yeah, how many wounds do I have? Like how many more do I need to heal? Or and I don't think the work is ever really done. And there's
Right.
no reward for being woundless. We're not rushing to get anywhere, you know.
Right.
Yeah, there's no reward for that. And like I want healing for everyone, but things are going to come up, no matter the most healed person, like things are still going to come up. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, and so maybe, the number doesn't matter so much as like just how you're functioning in life, right? And like the quality and value of your relationships,
Yeah.
and how you feel about yourself. And I think it's Gabor Mate had a quote. I think it was like, um, you don't see the wounds, you see the scars, something like
Yeah.
that. So you don't necessarily see the wound of like the 3-year-old part or 4-year-old part. You just see the scar, like how that part has adapted to that wound, like how it has then made meaning of and sense of and beliefs around what happened and then started to adapt. And then maybe it does these other things or it lives out some of those beliefs. So,
Yeah.
we end up interacting with a lot more of that than like the actual wound, which,
Right.
and then also in IFS, some of the parts that carry a big wound, we call exiles. So the exiled parts are parts that are really tender, really vulnerable. They don't really have a job in the system other than like holding the pain, like holding the strong belief, like I'm worthless, or I'm afraid that everyone's going to leave me and I'm going to be alone, or I'm a terrible person. They can be shameful, and they're usually buried. They're quite buried in the system, and there's so many parts protecting them, because they're so afraid of client feeling the feelings of that wound, of that burden, of that exiled burden. Yeah.
That's interesting. So the other parts around the exiled part or number of exiled parts are kind of like protecting or like concealing the exile.
Yeah.
That's
Like,
interesting.
yeah.
So there's like an awareness of the vulnerable person. Like if we're thinking about a group of 10 people on a journey, like the Dungeons and Dragons kind of journey,
Yeah.
the bard who has like zero, okay, oh my God. The bard who has like no protection and no weapons or whatever. I don't know that much about Dungeons and Dragons. Just enough to say like the rest of the party, the other 9 people usually stand around that person to protect them because they're aware of how vulnerable they are, even though they're so, so important to the health of everyone else.
Hmm.
Does that feel related to exiled like existence in the system?
Yeah, that's pretty good analogy. Yeah. Yeah.
So that makes me think of when we were in session off camera without
Yeah.
recording, and there was a part that was coming in, and you helped me ask them to take a rest, basically. Do
Mm.
you think maybe that's because that part is aware that I was about to speak with an exiled part?
I don't exactly recall, to be honest.
Yeah.
You're gonna probably know more than me. I'm gonna guess it could have been a protective part that was like maybe a thinking part or a part that was coming in and um yeah, just stepping in the moment. Do you recall like what it said? Right? You don't have to bring it up, but
Yeah, that sounds right, but I'm curious of like, is it pretty common for when exiled parts are being like talked with or explored that there is maybe more of a protecting reaction of the other parts? Okay.
Yeah, yeah. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's why I'm asking that because it's usually when you're getting to more vulnerable parts, that's definitely when more protectors will step in because that's their job. Like they're so used to doing that and they're doing a great
Yeah.
job with it, right? And so they're gonna definitely step in and just make sure that things are okay. Make sure, do I need to do anything? You
Yeah.
know, do I need to step in here? Is this too much? So even parts that are kind of like self will step in and kind of want to caretake or help or
Yeah.
navigate the session. Yeah.
So what does it look like for an exiled part to, would you say release burden, or what does that look like?
Yeah, well, there's a whole protocol around it
Yeah.
that we like learn and teach in the IFS model. So it's like it has like shamanic elements. Honestly, like when I first did it with my therapist, I was like, "What are we doing?" Because it
Yeah.
was like my eyes were closed. Um, it's so visual. Well, for me, it's so visual, and it really feels like you're on a journey. You're kind of guiding the part to come up with a way or asking the part how it wants to release that after like there's a whole protocol, so this isn't like a quick process.
Yeah.
There's many steps involved and there's a lot of witnessing and understanding what the burden is and having the part like really tell you and so that you really get like what it's been carrying and what that meaning is, what the moral meaning is that they've been carrying and like really believing about the client. So that takes time and space to really get that and witness that. And then if there's any like kind of redos that have to happen or anything that has to happen, like either in the past with a parent or somebody in the family or some kind of experience that they need to redo and you can kind of guide them through that and then you ask if they're ready. You kind of feel it out and see if they're ready to release that burden, which again like doesn't happen quickly usually. Uh, but if there's enough self energy there to witness and hold the part, parts do start to trust and they feel like, yeah, okay, I'm kind of ready. And
Yeah.
and then there's this beautiful process that happens where we ask the part like how it wants to release that burden. Do you want to give it up to the water? Do you want to give it up to air or fire, earth? So you go through all the elements,
Wow.
however they want to give it up. Okay, like I want to give it up to the sea. All right, like how do you want to do that? Do you want to put it in a bottle and throw it out to sea, or do you just want to, throw it out? Like so, you kind of create this scenario or ask questions to create this scenario with the part, and have them go through that process. Make sure they kind of unload it all, and then there's a process of like bringing in new qualities. So what new qualities do you want to bring into this? Like what does the part want to bring in? Okay, like more creativity and more painting and blah 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 blah. And so that whole process can take a while and there's definitely like a procedure to it that IFS teaches.
Yeah.
And it's really beautiful. It's quite a moving and like deeply somatic experience. uh yeah, I feel like coming out of that, you're just like, wow, like what happened? Like what was that? Because it's just you're in a different world and it's so real.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's really beautiful.
Um, can I ask if there's like if you've seen a pattern of elements for when you've released burdens?
Good question. I think I usually do water. Well, no, I've done no, that's not true. I've done all of them, to be
Okay.
honest.
Okay.
Different times. Yeah, I wanted to say water, but I definitely have done earth and it just kind of goes down to the earth and earth knows what to do with it. I've definitely done air, like out of a window, and I've of course done like fire, like bonfire, like love my parts love throwing things into the fire. So
Interesting.
yeah, we've gone through all of them. Yeah.
Are there more than four elements?
Are there?
I mean, in this like procedure.
In IFS universe? I don't think so.
Okay. Because, some systems have five or more.
What's the
Um,
fifth?
like ether, I think is one
Oh,
of them, or
sure.
there's wood or metal for like
Oh,
Chinese methods. So I
yeah.
was just curious if like, oh, maybe there's like, I don't know.
I mean, you can totally offer that. Yeah,
Yeah,
I would offer it.
interesting.
Yeah, it's really up to the parts, whatever they want to do. Yeah.
But I was like going through your chart in my mental map,
Same.
like, oh, what element? Where's the earth element? Yeah.
Same. Yeah, I know, right?
Yeah. And you have placements in every well, everyone has placements in every sign. Yeah.
Yeah, right? hmm Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you want to say anything about wounds? About Chiron?
Yeah.
About, yeah, tying into astrology?
I'm like right now my whole body's listening to what you shared. I
Yeah.
want to experience that. I want to feel that in my body. Because it really is like when it becomes kind of what we were talking about before, like narrative or psychodrama, when it becomes like an active drama in the psyche,
Mm.
it really is just like an unmatched experience. That like absolutely, like in my most healing moments, when it gets to that point, I feel the release. And that's maybe what I'm thinking about how we drew the swords cards. Like I staying in the mental space with wounds is a little more difficult, but I think it's like one of the only mediums we have with a podcast. So I'll kind of stay up there with like concepts,
Yeah.
with what I think might be a one-to-one with burdens for IFS. So there's a mini planet or a small planet. Technically, we call it an asteroid in astrology called Chiron. And Chiron is more of a modern astrology concept in ancient astrology, not talked about because it's not visible to the eye.
Mhm.
Um, so, okay, where do we begin? Chiron is, I'm not going to go into the whole myth of Chiron's existence, though I think that it's like such a beautiful metaphor and story for people to explore. And hundreds of astrologers on this planet have done a really amazing job with walking us through all the intricate corners of that story. So, Chiron was a centaur who did a lot of things, healed a lot of people, and himself felt isolated from both the centaur people, the horse people, and the humans. And there's this kind of like can never fully feel like they belong or he belongs in any setting, though he is so helpful and his focus is on healing. And part of the lesson or the thing that we can go into with Chiron energy is that we begin with our wounds, and those wounds, the more that we get to know them, explore them, and act with them, um, they offer us a way to heal ourselves and even more so heal other people with similar wounds or not similar wounds, but but that's it's a pretty helpful thing in the darker or sadder moments to hold on to, at least for me, that like this wound that I carry, whatever words you what I want to use for it, it does make me more deeply empathetic or deeply, I feel more able to love and understand people who have a similarly shaped like wound. That's the simple way to put it.
Mhm.
So before this episode, I was thinking like it may not be helpful to say some of the more commonly used phrases for like working with Chiron, because it usually is like, I mean, it may not be helpful in that I feel like the way Chiron is talked about can like really gloss over the reality of the symptoms, the experience of woundedness. And I was thinking about how IFS would be one of the most incredible ways to interact with one's own Chiron placement, because with our wounds, with our Chiron energy, the best way to move forward is to gain acquaintance and friendship and not need to change anything, not need to change the wound, but to enter the space of the wound and feel it, and make art. Like this is one of, like if we look at our Chiron places, making art is one of the best ways to work with the energy because it's not dismissing. It's creating, like obviously art. Um, yeah. The other thing I was thinking about is you brought up like triggering in relationships. What I've noticed in my clients in my personal life and my friends, there's both the Chiron in your birth chart, so like the snapshot of the sky, the moment that you take your first breath, and that placement can give you a lot of information in a number of ways. One of the most potent ways I see in a birth chart is if Chiron is aspecting or like having a conversation with another planet in the chart. So, for example, if someone has a Chiron that's like right next to their moon, so we call that a conjunction, there may be a lot of woundedness or information about one's woundedness with moon energy. And moon energy is expansive, but some of the keywords are like safety, security, how our body feels. It's not necessarily our vitality, but is how it's our wellness in our body. Um, a lot of people talk, or a lot of astrologers talk about the moon being connected to our mother's energy or how we felt nurtured by our mother, if we want to be like a literal relational kind of interpretation. So, thinking of like a Chiron being right next to the moon, the wound may look really close to the mother wound, a concept that's talked about as like everyone having, but obviously very personal and uniquely shaped. Um, so thinking about how Chiron is reacting, or not reacting, interacting with other placements can give you a lot of information. But I want to repeat that if you see your Chiron is like in a tense relationship with Jupiter and a positive relationship with Venus and like a conjunction with the moon or something like that, that's just information that can help you with making acquaintance. And it's in the conversations or in the open-minded curiosity, like soft, gentle approach to Chiron and his relationships in your chart that will actually help you see Chiron best. So you can type Chiron in the eighth house conjunct Pluto into Google and get really, really helpful key terms that can help you explore them and maybe like journal on those key terms.
Mhm.
But Chiron is such an embodied and experiential placement, just as our wounds are in our lifetime. Um, I think about how Venus in our birth chart is like one of the more obvious energies because Venus is the planet of values and appreciation. And those parts of us are usually more on display. And we get to experience other people's Venus parts more commonly because there's less shame around them, typically, unless Venus maybe is talking to Chiron, or maybe Venus is talking to Pluto or Saturn, and maybe there's a little bit more shame involved. So that's kind of a segue. The
I
other thing
think,
I was thinking about, oh, go ahead.
sorry, I have so many
Yeah,
questions. Is it okay?
yeah.
Well, Chiron's close to my Venus, is that right? Isn't that
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
Yeah, because that just made me wonder more about what you were just saying.
Oh, yeah.
And um, and maybe you could, if you want to explain more about that, you can. But I am also curious if there could be protective or protector parts close to Chiron in our charts. Like, since we know that protectors mostly are their job is to protect the
Yeah.
vulnerabilities, right? The exiles and the wounds. That I wonder if like in a chart there's Chiron and maybe close by there would be parts that show up as protectors. What do you think?
I think that's a really, yeah, that would be an important path for us to take, like in exploring this. I think Chiron's going to be a really important part of connecting IFS and astrology.
Yeah.
Your question makes me think of like, yeah, maybe there. the planets that are really close technically in the sky, so like in the same zodiac sign maybe, would be protectors. Or if like Chiron's in an air sign, may oh, let's say Chiron's in Mercury or in Gemini, sorry. Um, Gemini is ruled by the planet Mercury, so maybe Mercury, wherever Mercury is in the chart,
Mhm.
would be a protector or in some way a supporter of Chiron's energy because Chiron would be ruled by Mercury. In rule, we use the verb rule on purpose. There's like, it's an ancient tradition. I'm not using that word loosely. So if I were to choose a verb, rulership changes with the personality of the planet. So like Mercury to me, the verb would be like checks out or looks into or like just
Okay.
keeps
Yeah.
an eye on Chiron, where if maybe the ruling planet is Jupiter, is like Jupiter is like helping make sense of the world for Chiron. Like it's more, it really does like every element shifts the energy. And Chiron being in different zodiac signs also shifts the energy of the wounds. I wouldn't necessarily say that the wounds are like for that group of people who are born in those few years when Chiron's in Aries or something like that, like he
Right.
is now actually. That their wounds are going to be like warrior wounds, like Aries energy. It doesn't necessarily show up one to one like that.
Hmm.
Um, but that's a really interesting question.
Yeah.
On maybe in the chart we can find our supporters. Yeah.
Well, yeah, when you were talking about the closeness to the moon and like how that could produce some mother wounds, I'm like
Yeah.
just curious. Yeah, I'm like, okay, so there could be parts around, I don't know, that would adapt or have some meaning around um yeah, relationship with mother and
Yeah.
how that gets kind of acted out in some ways. But I also just wanted to circle back
Yeah.
to I guess just the concept that and you can this is my understanding, so correct me if I'm wrong, but the way that wherever Chiron is placed, you said that there's a way that however that wound shows up for you, that you feel like you can relate to other people who have a similar wound or like similar placement. Is that right?
Yeah, that's how
Placement.
Chiron is talked about often.
Okay.
And I'm like, I want to keep a really wide skepticism around that because that's a
Okay.
pretty bold statement, right?
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
like, would you say that could look like trauma bonding?
I mean, that's kind of what I mean. Like, it could look like I'm saying you have to have a certain wound in order to love or understand someone. And I don't mean that at all. But I
Mm,
think there is truth in that, like, when you meet someone who has a similarly shaped wound, there is this really soothing energy to being around them and like sharing. And
hmm.
like you can't heal from it together, right? Or like it doesn't make it better.
Yeah.
But it in so many ways it feels really good to know you're not alone. And
Yeah.
that's
And
the
be
like
witnessed. And
yeah, the witnessing.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. That
Yeah.
makes, yeah.
Yeah. And I also want to be careful with those kind of statements because there are like some really important wisdom leaders in our world, living or not living anymore, who they had really, really hard childhoods. And then people say, oh, you must have a hard childhood in order to be an incredible poet or an incredible monk or something like that. And I don't think that's necessarily true, but I think I'm curious about that
Mm-hmm.
a lot. And that reminds me of the Chiron energy. It's like
Mm,
no one would ever wish a
yeah.
wound on someone, but the wounds do um, adjust how we exist in this world.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah. So
And
it's a
it's like
tender
what you
topic.
do with this, you know?
Right.
It's
Yeah.
like the tools and, what you make of it, right?
Yeah.
And I know that there's a lot of like privilege and resources involved in all of that, right?
Yes.
And there's so many factors involved in kind of how you adapt and like what comes next after a lot of yeah, traumas or experiences that create wounds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting to bring up cards because that phrase of like it's not the cards you're dealt, it's how you play them, like feels pretty related.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Um, yeah. But I wanted to like touch on the relationship aspect because in our birth chart we have like a Chiron doesn't move. Our birth chart is like a snapshot, like a blueprint. Um, but Chiron's always moving in the sky, like through time and like in a miraculous way, most like all of our planets we can track and we know like 300 years from now where
Wow.
the moon is going to be on this day that year. Like that kind of, we have that kind of data and it's really interesting. So Chiron's moving through your chart at a pretty slow rate. It's a couple years-ish where he's in certain signs. He's doesn't feel as predictable like the sun or the moon. They're always going at the same rate. Um, what happens though is that every once in a while, Chiron makes the active, the in the sky Chiron makes aspects to different planets in your birth chart, and sometimes back to your own Chiron. And it's those moments that triggering is also a difficult word to use, but there are those moments where those aspects, we call them, or transits, can bring up a reminder, maybe, or an opportunity for going, like reaching or touching around the edges of the wounds even more. Recently, I've talked with some people. So Chiron's in Aries right now. I've talked with some people who've had like really, really significant Chiron moments where like Chiron was right over their Venus or Chiron was right over their sun or like something was happening where it's like, oh wow, like this is like such a tender, difficult moment. And it's, you don't, as an astrologer, I guess, you don't necessarily look for what Chiron's doing. You kind of look for what the sun's doing or Uranus or something. But it's really bizarre when I see that and I'm like, oh, okay, so this is how we should talk about it. We shouldn't talk about it as like an opportunity for growth or an opportunity for changing careers or something. It's like, this is a time where you're being asked to witness.
Mm-hmm.
Um, if I'm going to be more specific, I feel like it's like recently talked about Chiron transits feeling like middle school energy in that I taught middle school very briefly recently. In that it's like everything feels like the end of the world, and it is the end of the world as you know it because you're 11.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that fight you're having with someone in a different classroom is just as
Mm-hmm.
visceral and dramatic and terrible as like going to war.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes I relate this to woundedness. Like sometimes our woundedness feels like extremely dramatic, like we're going to war. And that is a reality that's inside of us.
Mm-hmm.
And we can treat it like we're being annoying or like over exaggerating that kind of energy. Or we can treat it like we're actually giving that like fire alarm in our body or in our shame or in our heart with
Mm-hmm.
respect because it is real.
Yeah.
Um, and that's middle school energy. It's like it
Mm-hmm.
is so real, and the more you scoff at it or roll your eyes, like thinking about an aunt or an uncle coming over, like, oh my God, like your daughter is being annoying, like she like broke her fingernail, like that kind of energy just makes it feel worse.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I'm seeing of like when Chiron's moving through the sky and making transits to your chart. It's like the more you treat it real, like the more you can like
Mm-hmm.
you gain love. And
Mm-hmm.
that's oh my God, I was like start to like talk about how love is why we're here and love is all there is. But that's what I feel in the Chiron energy is there's so much potential for love.
Yeah, I love that you brought that up because I mean a lot of my parts are like young, middle school parts or even younger mostly, but that it's the time when you're developing the belief, the intense belief, right? Because it's you're using the middle school brain. So a lot of our parts, even as like, active adults now, we still
Yeah.
have parts that have like the middle school belief.
Yeah.
And it's using middle school logic, it's using kid logic sometimes. Sometimes they don't make sense to us as adults. It's like, why would you believe that anymore? That's so long ago.
Yeah.
But it's like the parts are not that they're frozen in time, but they're kind of frozen in that time where they developed that middle school belief. And it was so real for them back then, right? It was like so intense. And
Yeah.
so really getting self to see that and understand that and feel like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry that happened. And like, no one was there for you at that moment too.
Yeah.
And really seeing that because I also notice a lot of critical parts coming in and being like, why do you still believe that? Don't believe that anymore. Being really
Yeah.
intense about the wound or about the belief and the meaning and almost, wanting client to snap out of it and, stop believing that. Like, that's silly. Don't be a stupid kid anymore. Like, you're not a kid, and kind of give like being like this, yeah,
Yeah.
kind of tough parent. So, yeah, so thank you for tying that in too. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. When you were talking, it was making me think of like, okay, so what's my middle school wound? There's probably 3 bajillion, but I was like, I think that I was like just 1 minute ago, I was thinking that in middle school, every time anyone spoke or wrote something, there was someone in the room who was gonna laugh, or someone in the room who was gonna like tell someone later, oh my God, KP said the stupidest thing. And I think that's when I like decided, like, okay, be so careful with everything you say. Don't talk out loud. You can type because that's safer because you can edit and delete. But when you
You had
speak,
computers?
what?
You had computers?
We had those
Oh,
big ass, we can curse. We had those big ass like you like put your the cloth over your hand kind of computers. Yeah, we had computers. Middle
okay.
school.
We only had like well, maybe this is revealing my age, which I'm totally fine with. Because what year was middle school? It was like late 90s.
Okay.
Yeah, mid to late 90s. It was like that we would only go to computer at the computer room. Like we had only a room that had
Yeah.
computers in it. And we go to
Yeah.
computer class, like I don't even know if it was once a week. And there was like the huge, what do they even call it? Like the computer that has like the keyboard attached to it, but it like
Yeah.
comes up. You know what I mean? Um, Dang, and all we did was like play Oregon Trail. Like that was all we did on
Oh my
computer.
God.
But,
I
but
love that game.
I could
I
reminisce
I
about
I was in middle school in 2001 and we
that.
had a computer lab. Yeah. I think I got a personal computer at my house like with my family.
Mhm.
I mean, we shared one like when I was 13, maybe.
Yeah, same.
Yeah. So it was like that weird time where like, oh, what can we can send email? I'm only a
Yeah.
child. Like that. I remember that like I'm a child. Who would I have to email?
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I relate to what you were saying so much. Like I definitely have middle school beliefs and around speaking in front of class for sure. Like I was
Yeah.
terrified of giving an oral book report. I remember like I knew it all. Like I was so smart, but getting up in front of the class was like terrifying. And then having
Yeah.
to memorize something and like report this information. I like played sick for like a week because I didn't want to do it and I was so terrified. And then I think finally my hack was I took out my contacts. I didn't wear glasses and I didn't wear contacts. So I could like barely like everything was like blurry and I could barely see the class
Ooh. That's
for
really
some reason.
smart.
I know, I was super adaptive. It was like seventh grade probably. And I got through it and I was like, oh my God, that was, it was so intense, but it really did feel like the worst thing, right? And
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. So speaking in front of class, getting something wrong, fumbling over words, um, being perceived as, not knowing something or
Yeah.
smart. Yeah, that's terrifying at that time.
It's
Yeah.
terrifying now.
It still is. But here we are on a podcast speaking
Yeah.
freely.
But I think my soul wants to bring that up now because like in the past year, I've really witnessed that part of me or the maybe a couple parts of me that are like 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 chest air out, like so frightened of
Hmm.
saying the wrong thing or saying something offensive without considering all the angles first. And that takes so much mental energy to make sure I'm not
Yeah.
offending someone. And I'm not saying in the way like, oh, women are so sensitive. Like I don't know what to say around them. I'm like it's something I really pride myself on and like being considerate of all people in the room. Um, Maybe that's a whole other topic of like consideration because
Yeah.
um all the
Yeah.
mental work that goes into that. But
Yeah.
yeah, Chiron energy is like it's ripe for exploration because of that. Because I think if we're going to go back to how astrologers talk about Chiron, typically, which is like your core wound, is how you can then help other people,
Yes. Mhm.
right? And like I again, I'm skeptical of that like pretty boiled down syllogism. Is that the word?
Ooh, it's a
Ooh,
good word.
I haven't read that word in so many years.
Uh,
I also lost my train of thought because of that word. What was I saying?
well, I think you probably have talked about that with me in a reading before. If you want to use me as an example, where my Chiron is and how that relates to my work.
Do you want to talk about it?
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, how about
completely.
you cue it up?
Cue it up. Well, so okay, now am I getting this right? My Chiron is very close to Venus.
Yeah, yeah, we would consider it conjunct. I think it's about 2 degrees away, but so that's still conjunct.
Cool. And it's in the 11th house.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, and I'm also, side note, curious about Chiron, if you want to speak about Chiron in which house it's in and how that could pertain to the wounds or like how you've made meaning of the wounds as well. So maybe we
Yeah.
too, but yeah, so 10th house. Do you want to say what 10th house is?
So, Chiron's in your 11th house.
11th house.
Yes. Yeah. And it's important to make that distinction because the 10th house is one of those, so there's 12 houses total. Everyone has the same number of houses. There are 4 of those houses that are considered like, we use the word angular, but it's kind of like the most important posts of one's life. There's the self, the other, the private space, the public space. The public space is the 10th house. It's most of the time the top of your chart. We can get into that some other day, why I'm saying most of the time.
Yeah.
The 11th house is right next to the 10th house near the top of the chart. The 11th house is where we look to like-minded individuals. Let's back up a little bit. Houses are parts or places of our life where we get more information on how parts of our life are expressed, I guess is the best way to put it. So the 11th house is like the house of friends, of hopes, of dreams, it's a pretty social house because it's friends and like-minded individuals. It's where we express our like great yearning for humanitarian like
Mm.
lushness, I guess. It's where we present the work that we make in the world. A lot of artists, whether they have planets there or not, a lot of artists have emphasis in that house if they are people like artists who show their work often. Um, and maybe I can give examples sometime. I don't have one right now. You are also an artist that shows your work often, and you have Venus, the planet of art and value and love, in the 11th house.
Yeah.
You, from my perspective, are also very loving and like lush in your friendships. You like,
Okay.
um,
Yes.
we're on speaker view, so none of you just saw there was like this like very sexy tongue mouth moment that Chelsea did. Anyway, so your Venus is there and Chiron is conjunct your Venus. I don't have your chart queued up right now, but I do know that both your Venus and Chiron in Gemini in the 11th house are trining, so it's a positive connection. Positive is a loaded term, but I mean like there's a fruitful connection, I guess, with your Jupiter and Aquarius in your seventh house.
Oh,
So, as your astrologer, my questions in that moment, if I remember, were um, do you feel a woundedness connected to your values or your ability to receive and give love in a like a friendship way, possibly? But the question was so connected to your bonded relationships or your like love relationships because there was this conversation being had between Chiron, Venus, and Jupiter in the seventh house of partnership.
oh,
So
okay.
then my question was like, do you feel like there's a woundedness or a connection between how you value yourself or how you feel valued and also generosity and expansion energy in relationships, like bonded relationships?
Mm-hmm.
So, as an astrologer, I think it's really important that when I'm talking about Chiron energy, it's questions,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like what I said earlier, it's like Chiron gives us a little bit of like a clue or a path, like the placement and energy conversations in the chart. But Chiron energy is only fruitful if it's an open, curious, questioning kind of space.
Okay.
So that's
Yeah.
that. If I remember our session, it was just like, let's open that up and see
Yeah.
how it may be connected to maybe something that's happening in your life now, or 10 years ago, or 20 years ago, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And like, is there a pattern you're seeing
Mm-hmm.
where
Yeah.
maybe you hadn't seen the connection between X, Y, and Z? Is
Mm-hmm.
there a connection between them? Maybe not.
Yeah. I remember that. Yeah, we did find a lot of connections and it all made a lot of sense.
Yeah. And we talked about the middle school energy.
For sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, and giving and receiving in relationships. And also like what I'm now doing, in my work, like as far as being a therapist and essentially like helping, not just women, but everybody, um, not just in relationships either, but just, with healing, with parts, with themselves, with
Yeah.
wounds. Yeah.
Another element about your chart specifically that may be interesting for listeners is that your Chiron being in Gemini, ruled by Mercury, is in your first house. And that tells me something that I want to ask as a question. It's like,
Okay.
do you feel like if we're considering the first house as like your role in this world, first house is a lot of things, but it's like how we act in this world, in which way are we a player in this world? Um,
Mhm.
my question is, I don't know if we talked about this before, but like, do you feel like your woundedness helps you see your role more clearly?
Mm. Oh, for sure. Yeah. It gives me a path, direction,
Yeah,
uh, purpose, right? And yeah, I guess direction or even um the drive to help others with that. Because it's
it's
something I know so well, right? And it's like, oh, I've been there. And and
yeah,
I know that there is potential for healing and I know that there's potential for um like having a different not a different life, but experiencing life in a different way that feels a lot more free.
yeah.
Yeah.
I want to point out that you use the word drive and direction, and those are first house words. So it's like, oh, that's lovely. And I don't know if I was clear that so Chiron in Gemini ruled by Mercury, Chelsea's Mercury's in the first house in Leo. That's where I was going with that, but I don't know if I said that. Um,
Did I use those terms intentionally? I don't know.
I can't tell. Yeah. Um, maybe it could be helpful to say like my Chiron is in Cancer in the seventh house, where my moon in Cancer and Jupiter in Cancer is as well. My moon is not conjunct. It's too many degrees away. There's a lot of like, well, how many degrees do we read for Chiron? Is it
Yeah.
1 degree? Is it 3? Is it, Um, but far enough away where I can confidently say Chiron's not conjunct, but Chiron
Mhm.
is closely conjunct my Jupiter and aspecting almost every planet in my chart, like in a very strange way. Well, not I shouldn't say that. Not every planet, but some really significant planets, definitely my Venus. And I do contemplate that a lot because there's this conversation between my house of partnership or closely bonded relationships and my role in this world and how I present myself or connect with people out in the world. And I
Mhm.
feel for sure that's connected to my woundedness, but mostly it's my deeply bonded relationships, like
Mhm.
one of my siblings,
Yeah.
and a few of my like really, really close friends. Like that's where I feel the edges of my wounds.
Mhm.
Yeah, so it has helped me contemplate that, but it wasn't until I started like speaking with Chiron and getting curious that
Yeah.
yeah,
I'm curious how you do that.
I it's
What
more like
does it look
it
like?
it's art. Yeah. For me it's I do ink paintings. I think that I rely a little bit too much on my verbal or mental space. So when I get out of the verbal space, maybe that's because my Chiron's in Cancer. It's more moony, more moody, more body based. When I
Mhm.
actually get into my body, that's a feat. When that happens, I think that's when I can have conversations. And it's not helpful to use the word conversation because it really is like I ask a question and then I like I use trance a lot in my practices. So when I get into a trance space, then it's more, I can feel like little storms brewing and then they
Mhm.
start releasing. And I set intentions. I set like I believe I'm speaking to Chiron. I'd like to get to know you, and I know that you're a part of me. And I thank you for being there. I thank you for being there for all of us. Like it's I allow myself to flow, and sometimes it becomes something completely different. And it really has only been the past like 4 or 5 years that I've done that kind of work, and I really wish I had done it earlier,
Mhm.
which is like probably another part of me speaking like, oh, I wish you had done this earlier. Like, it's a really urgent wish.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and yeah, it's like when you see the beauty of it and all the lessons and like the gold that you've spun and the life that you can have now and yeah, how good that feels. It's like, yeah, oh, I wish we would have done that a long time ago.
Yeah.
And yeah, you are exactly where you need to be and you're right on time.
Right. Yeah. And reminding oneself, it's like the word perfect literally means whole. Perfect doesn't mean you're an improved iteration of humans. Like
Yeah,
it's important to acknowledge that like you are whole at every moment of your life.
yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. Yeah. And I love that prompt and maybe like for something to take away for maybe for people to kind of put this practice um to take it home with them and try it out. It could be a nice prompt or way to try to connect with Chiron and yeah, getting into trance or making art from that and just seeing what comes up. I'm gonna try that.
Yeah, I wonder if your Chiron being in an air sign also is supported by more conversation.
Perhaps,
Yeah.
perhaps.
So, yeah, if we're like thinking about prompts for people who may be listening, it's like, what element is your Chiron in? Is it fire, earth, water,
Mm,
air? And maybe that's the way you can approach creating a relationship with him. Like, if you want to view, this is how I view parts work is like you are speaking to beings
mhm,
though they may not have a body and
mhm,
they're inside of you, they're a part of you, right? So it's
mhm,
like you're having a conversation with him if you have a Chiron and air sign, or maybe like you go to the water. Like
mhm,
be as literal as possible. Here's your prompt. Be as little literal as possible. What element is your Chiron in? Use that element to get to know him because he is you.
mhm. Hmm.
I kind of want to talk about the different places in the houses in the chart, but that's a lot. So I encourage people to like Google like, oh, Chiron in the first house, what may that like look like? And that could support the exploration.
Totally. Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. This is great. This has been really wonderful.
Yeah, that's fun.
Do we have anything else we want to share? Does that feel complete?
Mm. Well, I'm like, I want to like combine the practices, but I think that might be for a different time. Um,
Yeah. Any idea of how that feels or looks right now to you? Just as we've kind of synthesized some of the information and yeah, what
what
do
do
you
you
think?
think
Mm. Hmm.
or feel?
Hmm. It to me looks like, I mean, if I'm just kind of inquiring about parts and just doing parts work, I'm just gonna I'm feeling like noting um maybe just on my own system, like exiled parts or even some of just the burdens that either have been unburdened in my own system or that maybe still are there. And I'm just kind of like maybe intellectually linking um the connection to, okay, is this in a specific house? Is it all, yeah, Chiron? Um, so it still feels, yeah, it feels a little intellectual for me right now. Making
Yeah.
sense.
I wonder if like thinking about what we kind of talked about in the beginning of like psychodrama. Is that the
Hmm.
word you use? Psychodrama. That feels like a really great portal or opening to connecting. So it's like IFS is like so reliant on witnessing,
Yeah. Hmm.
and like naming maybe or making acquaintance, like you would a friend. And
Hmm.
that's how I'm viewing Chiron as well. It's like you can have the data, but you must experience him in order to like feel shifts. Don't expect shifts, but
Hmm.
that's like the way to move
Hmm.
inside of yourself is like making experiential connection.
Hmm.
Yeah, this is something to explore.
Yeah, and it makes me curious, like if some of my parts that are connected to Chiron, or in that house, feel like if they become unburdened and they're kind of freed up, like how does Chiron look in my chart then? Right? Like is it integrated in a different way? Or does it still have some kind of woundedness? Or yeah, I guess just like what is that? What does it look like if some of those things have
Ooh.
been healed?
That's like the most interesting question to me when it comes to astrology. Um,
Because these things are
yeah,
constantly changing. Like planets are
yeah,
constantly, like, right? Even like the asteroid, like it's all, there's transits, right? There's everything's moving. It's not static,
right.
right?
And like neither are our psyches.
No. Hmm.
Yeah, Adam Ellen Boss, who's a teacher of mine, an astrologer, an incredible teacher. Everyone should take his year one class. He's amazing. He talks about how it's best to approach the birth chart with a question because the birth chart is always changing.
Hmm.
And like in kind of an unknowable way, every time I look at my own birth chart, I notice something different. Or like I don't focus on something I was focusing on the last time.
Hmm.
It's like that kind of, I don't even know the best words to describe it. It's like looking at water, you know? Everything's kind of like moving and reshaping.
Yeah.
The snapshot blueprint of the birth chart without a question can kind of just look like numbers on a page. And I think that's also how I approach like when I'm in a therapy session. It's like, yeah, it may have been true last week that this needed to be urgently discussed. And then a week later, it's it's not important to talk about anymore. And I think that's like the most similar or like the one-to-one experience I have with therapeutic modalities and astrology.
Mm-hmm.
And then on top of that, the planets are constantly moving in the sky, the active sky. So
Totally.
in your snapshot birth chart, the constantly moving
Yeah.
sky is interacting different with other things every second, every minute.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's exciting.
Ah, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's such a maybe there's an idea or even belief culturally too about astrology being so stagnant, I think.
Yeah.
Right, like, oh, you're that sun sign, that means you're this and you're always that. And there it's not taking into account the evolution, right? And yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So thank you for that. That's beautiful.
Yeah. And beyond that, it's like everything is interacting with everything.
Yeah.
Every
Okay.
part is interacting with every part. And so like yeah, the more you make acquaintance, the more you see how intricate and important everything is.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I love that part of it.
Wow. Yeah,
Yeah.
beautiful.
You can never become an expert, and that's why I like astrology.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
Or you can I think the word is not expert. It's like you can never be what's the word? Is there even a word for someone who knows every single thing about something? Because I don't think that's a thing in
Omnipotent.
humanity.
Wait, omniscient?
Oh, omniscient, like, yeah, my God.
But that's only God, right?
That's only God.
Or source or whatever we want to call it.
Mhm.
Yeah. Oh, beautiful.
Thank you for today.
Thank you for today. Does that feel like a
Was that fun? Was that entertaining?
was it I feel entertained.
Yeah, me too.
Okay, good.
Okay. Love you.
Love you. Bye. And scene.
Thank you for joining us for Parts and Charts, the IFS and Astrology podcast. If something sparked insight or resonated with you, we'd love to hear from you.
No, really, we're here to make friends. Reach out to us. Leave a comment, subscribe, and if you feel called, share this episode with someone you care about. Or if you want to work with us one-on-one and go deeper with this work, check the link in the show notes for how to find us.
Until next time, may all of you feel a part of the family.